Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my passion. Today, we're going to talk about IEPs, individual education programs. And I'm going to explain each section, what goes in it. So, the first section is the administrative data sheet. And that data sheet is just what it says. It gives the data of the student's parents, the IEP meetings, dates for the one you're in right now, the one for next year, and the one for the 3-year reevaluation. Then it talks about the school that the student is in and who the main person is for special education. That is the administrative data sheet. The next section is the parents' concerns. And I have to say that the parents' concerns are very important, even though they may not think so from the team. But it is the most important part of the IEP because it's supposed to be driven by you, by the parent or the guardian, driven by what you say you are concerned about. It's supposed to explain, you're supposed to explain exactly why and what you want to see in the IEP. And what you should do is actually write it down and bring it to the team meeting because that's the important thing. You don't want them to write what you say. You want them to write verbatim what you've written. So come into the meeting with your concerns written down so they can copy it. The next section is students' strengths and key evaluation summary. Student strengths is another important piece because you want the team, the school team, to understand that your child has a life, what they like to do, what makes them happy, even if they're gamers. If that's what makes them happy, more power to them, right? So that's very important. What does your student like to do with their life right now? The next section is the evaluation summaries. And depending on how many and what the evaluations were most recent, is what they're supposed to give you a little blurb about. For example, speech. They tell you all about the summary of the speech evaluation, what they came up with. And that's just one example. After all of the goals, however many there are, and that has to do with how many evaluations there were and what the student needs. So they give you the current performance, and that means whatever they're doing in that goal to begin with, and the title of the goal, whatever they're doing right now, that's the current performance level. Then underneath that is the goal, whatever the goal is going to be, and it's a yearly goal. And after the goal are benchmarks and objectives. And those benchmarks and objectives say how they're going to measure whether or not the student makes the goal. And they'll give you information about how the student will show that they've made progress. After the goals comes the service delivery grid. And what that is, it explains where the goals are going to be worked on, who works on the goals, and for how long. So in the service delivery grid, you have section A. The first thing they talk about is who is going to be the one to consult with the teachers, like a board certified behavior specialist. And sometimes it'll be like a speech pathologist, but all they're doing is consulting in grid A. Grid B is when the student is in regular education classrooms, and what do they need to do to help them? What they say is how the disability affects progress in that particular section. And it's all about education, nothing more than that. What the child does in ELA, math, science, and history, and any other class they may be in. And then they give you a whole list of accommodations to level the playing field for the student to be able to participate in the classroom. Grid C is outside of the classroom, one-to-one, small group, however they decide to make it work. And anything can be in there, any of the goals. And this is all telling you about goals, A, B, and C, where they're going to be, who's going to do them, work on them with the student, how long, how often. I mean, it gives you good information. Then the next section is non-participation justification. What does that mean? That means that anytime you have grid C services, you're not actually in a regular classroom. So they have to explain why that is. And after that section comes longer year, shorter year, longer day, shorter day. If they give the student longer year, that means they will be participating in summer services. It means that they would suffer substantial regression over the summer without summer school. After that, they talk about transportation. And transportation means the big bus, a short bus, a taxi, Uber. I'm kidding. But that's how is the student going to get to school and get home? Are they going to walk? Do they just live around the corner? Not usually. But it's how the student is going to get to school. The next section is the district-wide or statewide evaluation. This is the one that determines whether or not a student graduates from high school with a diploma. There are tests that they have to do. In Massachusetts, it's called the MCAS test. Every state has district and statewide testing that has to be recorded so that you know how well or how not well the student is doing. The next section is the additional information. Anything that has to do with what year they're targeting graduation for the student. Anything else that they know is going to affect the student but doesn't have to be in the other sections. Additional information, that's what it's called. After the additional information, now we're talking about signature page. The signature page will give you the right, I say the power of the pen, to make a determination as to whether or not you agree with the IEP. So you check off, I accept the IEP in full. If you partially agree with the IEP, you check off, I accept the IEP in portions. And the last check off is, I don't accept this IEP at all. Underneath that, there are lines where you can write what it is that you don't agree with. And if it's lengthy, I would suggest you write it all out. I don't like this. I don't think this is appropriate. Things like that. After that is the placement page. The placement page is important too because it tells you where your child is going to be placed to get their needs met in education. You have to agree to that too. And if you don't agree with it, there's this thing called stay put. And stay put means stay put. I'm not allowing my child to go to, a different school, a collaborative, whatever. I want my child to be educated in their home school. And after that, you're done. One thing I have to say though, you have to know, you have to understand what they write. Because sometimes it's not written appropriately. Oh, I forgot one thing. In the present levels of performance A and B, besides accommodations, if there are going to be modifications or specially designed instruction, that's where it would go right underneath the accommodations. I wanted to make sure you knew that. So all I have to say is read it, understand it. If you don't understand it, find somebody who does. You can even email me and I will give you the answer to your question about the IEP. Because that's what I do. That's my passion. So contact me if you need to. Tell your friends. Subscribe. And have a good day.